Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Lucy DeGray. I am the founder and director of Resonant Bodies Festival. And this is part one of a three-part series that we're doing on recording for singers. And we're assuming that you have never recorded before and we're just starting from the most basic. However, both Sam and I are not at the most basic level, even though I kind of consider myself to be. I still have done quite a bit of recording at home myself. So if at any point we say something that does not make sense to you, or you have any questions at all, just type it in the chat and we'll slow it down, go backwards. We have lots of links, things to share with you. And Sam is an audio engineer. I actually don't know your preferred title. Is it audio engineer?
Yeah, audio engineer. I call myself a musician and audio engineer these days.
Musician and audio engineer. There we go. I met Sam, I guess, just from different gigs that we were both on, probably through Talia.
hmm
And Sam came to our first info session workshop, and we were chatting afterwards. And I was saying, man, I bet you have a lot to say about recording for singers. And he said, oh, yeah, I definitely do. And I said, oh, why don't we team up and do a little workshop for everyone? Because as a singer and everyone recording themselves at home right now, we all need this help. So, Sam Torres, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hi everybody.
Sam has a cool setup. Do you want to tell us what you are working with there, audio wise?
Sure. So right now I'm using a mic that if you've ever watched any YouTubers, you've probably seen them using this mic. It's a Shure SM7B. I'll put that in here. So it's there are a lot of numbers and letters and recording equipment. Um, this mic has basically been around since the 70s. Michael Jackson used it really famously. Um, it's a pretty common, standard kind of middle budget range dynamic microphone, and it's out of frame, but it's on an arm that I can push to the side when I'm not using it, which is really cool. And then I'm using it connected over this cable here to an audio interface. So it's not a USB mic, it's a standard microphone. Um, and that's it. My headphones are, oh, you can't read that at all. They're Sennheiser headphones, which I love Sennheiser stuff. I have a Sennheiser microphone that I'm going to talk about later. And that's it. It's pretty straightforward.
It sounds like a really good setup, though. Um,
Well, thank you.
and I'm using an SM58, which we will be talking a lot about. Uh, I don't know what we'll talk about what dynamic microphone means and condenser microphone. But Sam, what kind of microphone is an SM58?
That is also a dynamic mic. So both of us are using dynamic mics at the moment. Um, I'm just putting in here that Lucy's using a Shure SM58. Um, my Someone's asking about my audio interface. I'm using something from the brand RME, and we'll talk about audio interfaces as well um, later. I would not really consider this an entry level audio interface,
I have a
but
Focusrite, and it was really
yeah,
cheap.
yeah,
That
and
is
we're
definitely entry
yeah,
level one, and also it's a pain in the butt sometimes if you're running. Like if I run Zoom and I have iTunes open, it'll just crash and it'll just like disconnect itself from my computer
oh no,
because it can't handle, I don't know, like thinking about sound coming out of more than one program or something. Um, so that's a pain in the butt. I'm going to share right now a link in case you didn't get it earlier. This is to a Google document that we've put up where it just outlines everything that we're going to talk about today. Um, so I'm gonna tell you really quickly what we're going to talk about and then what we'll talk about in session two. So today we're going to talk about equipment, microphones, cables, interfaces, mic stands, um, Daws, which is DAW and stands for
Digital Audio Workstation.
Boom, which is something like Reaper, Logic, Ableton. It's just the software in your computer that helps you make recordings. We'll talk about different budgets. We'll talk about recording on your iPhone. And then we'll talk about the setup and how to deal with different kinds of spaces, checking levels, soundproofing a space, where you stand in the microphone, how close do you stand to it. And then any questions that you have here, basically. In the second session, we'll talk more about kind of troubleshooting, setup. What else do we have for session 2, Sam?
Yeah, session 2, anything we didn't get to today also, and then troubleshooting, setup, and
Multi-tracking, which means
mhm.
recording on top of another audio file that already exists, or recording with a click track. How do you deal with click track bleed into your, like you have to sing so loudly, but then means you have to play something really loudly here and then it bleeds into the microphone. How do you deal without that? Yeah, we'll talk more specifically about the software. So that's all session 2. Session 2 is next Saturday, same time. Except that one, I think we'll have people with faces instead of just the chat here. So without further ado, we will kind of dive in and we will answer questions as we go and kind of as we come up to them. And again, please stop us if anything is too jargony, because I know when I first started working with amplified music, just as a performer, someone would say XLR cable, and I was like, I don't know what that is. So, simple, I know simple terms like that can kind of just like throw you off. So anything that we say, just we'll slow it down. All right.
Yeah, and I get excited about this stuff, and I tend to get super into it. So if we are going too fast, don't hesitate to slow us down or ask for a clarification. And I'm also I see Deshaun has a question. I'm going to write down some questions that come up for later as well. So feel free to just drop them in there
Cool.
as they come.
Cool. So, Sam, I'm a singer. I don't own any equipment yet. How do I start recording myself at home? What do I need?
All right. So Lucy, um, there are basically two options to if you're brand new and you're just getting started. Um, and those two options are in large part going to be determined by your budget, and also if you think about how much recording you're going to be doing and what kinds of purposes those recordings are going to be used for, whether it's kind of archival recording concerts or more professional stuff that's going to be mixed later on. And those two options are using a portable recorder, which some people have already mentioned using, like that one that Lucy's holding up. Um, if you want to also, if you want to see both of us at the same time, you can switch to gallery view, I think, and then you should be able to see both of us at the same time. So you have your portable recorders on one hand, and on the other hand, you have a kind of more complete recording system, which is going to involve different components, including a microphone, some cables, a stand of some kind, and an audio interface, which I don't have on screen at the moment, but
I'm trying to drag mine over without unplugging
oh,
everything and causing a disaster. It looks like this. The reason you need an audio interface, which I didn't know,
audio interface.
yes, is because when you have an XLR cord, it has that 3-prong thingy, the attacher, and
Yep.
if you have something like a Mac, we have fewer and fewer ports for anything inside, but never, ever, ever has there been a port for an XLR cord. So you have to have a special interface where you can plug that 3-prong thingy into, and then that kind of sums it all up and puts it through a USB connection, Sam? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. This is what the XLR cable looks like. On one end, it has holes, on the other end, it has prongs, and it also locks into place, um, typically on both sides. And all microphones, I have three different microphones here, unless they're a USB mic,
like a Yeti, which is what.
like a Yeti. Um, all these microphones, this is the clip, the stand mount, but all these microphones have the same connector. So the audio interface not only accepts the connection, the physical connection for the microphone, but it also boosts the signal and converts it into something that your computer can work with. So those are the two options that you have.
Yeah. So
So
either
yeah, one
buying
option.
and
Go
and
ahead.
and recording, sorry, using an SD card, which is on the side, and then taking the SD card. I actually have an old laptop where I can just plug the SD card directly in. If you don't have that, you're gonna have to get a little, you know, USB with a
You
some
can get
kind of
one of
converter.
these little card reader thing with
Aha,
a USB on the back.
nice. Yeah.
Um,
Um, and
but
this
yeah,
one, this Zoom, you can record on these mics that come with it, or you can plug in something here. And you don't have to just plug in an XLR. You can do the other kind. What's that
quarter inch.
kind? Yeah, quarter inch.
Mm-hmm. Have all kinds of show and tell cables here.
Yeah,
Quarter inch. Oops. The same on both sides. And yes, and those are great also, Lucy, because I think you can use those without a computer and with a computer, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
which is great and flexible and cost effective. So, but in general, except for specific kinds of um, products like the one Lucy has, you're either going to be using a one portable all-in-one device versus a 2 to 3 part system. What about a simple setup like PC and microphones? So I think the question is asking about USB microphones, and um, I am not the biggest fan of USB microphones because I think that they are in general not great for music. They're really good for video conferencing and meeting and things like that, and they are convenient. However, I think that you will actually get better audio quality with a portable recorder. Um, and that's in some ways better because then you don't always have to have your laptop with you as well. So I think if I was going to choose between a USB mic and a portable recorder and spend the same amount of money, I would go with the portable recorder.
hmm Someone says
Yeah,
about the blue mic, which has a USB cable, the blue Yeti. Yes.
yeah, or the snowball or whatever.
Um, yeah. Why don't you tell me that story that you told me about a singer who had recently done something on a Yeti mic at home and how it sounded to you.
Yeah, I was working with an ensemble earlier in the quarantine that was putting together a kind of virtual band video. So they were all recording themselves and filming themselves at home. They sent me all of the files, and then I was mixing them together. And the singer was using a Blue Yeti mic, and I had a really, really hard time getting it to sound cohesive with the rest of the instruments because it was just very thin sounding and it didn't work well with her voice. And I had to actually ask her to re record it and get it much closer and do all these various things. Um, so yeah, they can cause more problems than I think they're worth. Somebody says the Zoom H2 can be used as a USB mic. Yeah, so the just so we're clear, Zoom the software is a different company from Zoom, the company that makes audio equipment.
Yeah.
Just to clear that up. But yeah, Zoom, the hardware company, make really good, affordable, high quality things that I didn't actually know you could use it as a USB mic, but they're very flexible. So I will definitely recommend those. Um,
That makes sense because it has a little in here and then that goes to USB and then you can probably just select it in your computer settings, I'm guessing. Um, Yeah.
Yeah. I'm actually using a Zoom as my webcam right now
Oh, wow.
because they make ones with cameras as well.
Mm. Let's talk
Um,
about Daws. Is that
mhm.
the right place to go?
um, yeah. So regardless of whether you're using a portable recorder or a USB mic or a, a more complete recording setup, you're going to need something to edit and record in, but especially edit and then maybe do some things in the mixing stage, which we'll talk about. Um, and those programs can range from completely free, a couple people are mentioning Audacity here, to many hundreds of dollars. I'm going to recommend one called Reaper, which I'll put in here. Audio software is Reaper, which has an unlimited free trial. So you can use it for without paying for it for years if you want to. But technically, they do ask that you buy a license, which is $60. Um, excuse me, which is quite affordable in my opinion for what you're getting. But again, you don't have to pay that until you are ready. And I Reaper is a really professional, high quality software that comes with a lot of effects like reverb and things to add onto your audio. And I think it's a much higher quality software and also more professional than Audacity. So Audacity is fine, but I strongly recommend you check out Reaper, which learning Reaper will also give you the ability to interact with audio engineers who are using programs like Pro Tools or
And
Logic.
how does one learn a program like Reaper?
That's a great question. That can be it can have a hard learning curve, but Reaper actually specifically have a lot of tutorials on YouTube for very specific tasks like how to start recording, which we'll talk about also here. But uh, if you look up the Reaper YouTube channel, they basically you can watch their walkthroughs and get started pretty quickly. Um, and same with most of the other softwares as well. But I'm going to be mostly talking about Reaper because it's that good in my opinion.
Mhm. I mean, I think people at Radio Lab, the podcast, they work out of Reaper. A lot of professionals work
Hmm.
out of Reaper. And I know I'm a newbie on Ableton. I'm pretty experienced in Logic. I actually don't use Reaper, but I'm always typing questions into Google like can't get the tempo to change, blah, 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 and you just type that in. And then it'll actually now on Google searches, instead of showing you one 15-minute video and you have to watch the whole 15-minute video to get to just the 30-second part that you need, will actually cut to the exact moment in the video where they answer that question, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
So Google is your friend, but that's kind of the slow and sometimes painful way to learn how to do it. But you can also you can have like a one-on-one lesson with someone who's an audio engineer, and they'll just help you get set up that first time, and then you can kind of go from there. I think it's worth doing, or doing some kind of exchange with someone. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
all right.
yeah,
Keep.
absolutely. And although I have been working in audio for several years, I never actually went to school for audio engineering, or I haven't even taken any um, classes like for credit in audio engineering. Everything that I've learned has been uh, either from YouTube or Google, um, or from people that I've written to and asked questions of.
Cool.
So yeah.
So if
So
I only have $100 to spend on audio equipment, you're recommending that we buy the Zoom H1, right, Sam?
yeah. So if you're not going to spend or you can't spend any money to get started, uh, I recommend looking up some apps for your if you have a smartphone or an iPad or something like that. Um, get an app that's made for recording music. because the standard voice memos app will change the volume of your recording continuously to try and match uh, what the input is, which is not great for music. If you sing a loud note, then it'll turn you down, and vice versa. An app that's specifically intended for music won't do that, and you'll get better results. I put a couple of examples in the outline that Lucy sent out for iPhones and iPads, but I don't have an Android, so I didn't feel like I could recommend anything.
I'm
If
just dropping that
you,
link again in the chat in case anyone missed it.
yeah,
Continue.
if you are going to spend around $100, I recommend going with something like a Zoom H1, which I used to have one, but it was it's one of my friends has it. It's basically the size of this microphone, and it has two little mics on the end like that, like the one Lucy was holding up earlier. But it doesn't have any additional inputs, and I've traveled with that and I've had it for about 8 years and it still works perfectly and it sounds great.
Mm.
So you can't really go wrong with that. And for the money, I think that spending $120 in this case on a portable handheld recorder will go a lot further than trying to spread $120 out across a microphone and cables and all the other stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so that's my recommendation. I think if you're going to spend a little bit more, like maybe $400 or $500 starts to be where it maybe makes more sense to invest in a dedicated microphone and all the other gear.
Which we have linked to in this lovely um, Google Doc. Yes. Rachel is copying and pasting that. Rachel from ResBods hanging out in the chat, helping everybody. And then Sam, you say for $1,000 you can have a really nice setup. Why don't you tell us about what that one entails?
Yeah, so um, I'm just writing down. Somebody has a question here about getting good audio and video. I'll make sure to come back to that question. So yeah, once you start buying a dedicated microphone and all the other gear, the more you spend on the gear, the higher quality the gear will be. But you're always basically going to be buying the same kinds of equipment. So you could spend $100 on an SM58, and then if you want to upgrade your microphone, you could spend $350 or whatever on one of these. I don't remember I think the price changed recently, but um,
Did it go down or up?
I think it went up because everybody's getting these right now. But don't worry because I'm going to talk about buying used gear, which I strongly recommend. Um, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But my point is that once you invest in the whole recording setup, if you upgrade something or you spend more money on something, you're still going to be buying a microphone at the core of it, or an audio interface at the core. It's not like there's another third recording system. I hope that makes sense.
Sam, if I was not only thinking about recording at home, but
Hmm.
also potentially taking a mic to gigs with me, like if I wanted to invest in a nice microphone that would sound good live and was good for recording, is there a microphone that you recommend no matter the price? Like, someone has a rich uncle and it's your birthday's coming up kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think that is a good thing to do. We were talking about that a little bit the other day, also with a pandemic. Sharing microphones maybe isn't ideal. So, and I was telling Lucy that as an audio engineer, I see all the time performers bring their own microphones, and that's something that we're used to working with. As for which specific microphone, and this goes for recording and live applications, but um, it, this is a terrible answer, but it will depend on your voice and your preferences for your voice. That said, there will be kind of best options for your price range at each price range. So once you get into the $800 to $1,200 range, then it really just becomes about which mic sounds nice on your voice. The quality is going to be about the same. Um,
So for my voice, for example, I like it to sound warmer.
mhm.
Um, it can get a little thin and nasally as you get up into the higher notes. So what kind of mic would you recommend for adding warmth and depth to a female voice or a high voice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would probably recommend getting a handheld, and handheld just describes really the shape. Like this is not really a handheld microphone, but this is more of a handheld microphone. This is definitely not a handheld microphone, but an SM58 is more friendly to being handheld. So I would recommend getting a handheld condenser microphone. And we're going to talk about the difference between condenser and dynamic. Um, but I would recommend condenser because I'm trying to think of a way to not make this very technical, but I think that they would be better suited for what you're looking for.
A condenser,
Um, Sorry, what?
a, a condenser microphone is better for what I would want.
Yeah, in many cases, there are some dynamic microphones that might work well for you. Actually, like the one Deshaun mentioned, the M Bayer Dynamic M88, um, potentially would be a great option for you. But overall, I think dynamic mics can be a little bit hard to get that kind of warmth um, out of, and that has to do with some technical things about how dynamic mics work versus how condenser mics work.
Let's talk about that. Also, what is the word? If I've heard also the term directional mic.
Yeah,
Is that a certain kind? Because like this one that I'm talking to, if I move my mouth over here, you really won't hear me. I have
yeah.
to talk like kind of directly into it. And I can kind of talk across it, but it's better if I'm going right into it. Sorry, everyone. My
Hmm.
cat is demanding attention at this moment. Um,
um, yeah. So that's actually a great demonstration, and I wonder if I turn this one, if you can hear how it changes.
yes.
Yeah, that's a really really good demonstration. So, oh, one more trick for you if you have a higher voice or a voice that doesn't have a lot of low end, and you're using a directional microphone, get closer to it because I don't know if you hear. I'm still talking straight at this mic, but you probably get less of my low chest sound versus when I'm right up on it. Now I sound like a radio announcer and I'm actually talking softer.
Yeah.
So,
Whenever I do the ResBods podcast, I'm always asking people like to be as close to the mic as possible, basically like this, because it just
yeah.
sounds richer, it sounds more full, and I think as a singer, you're hoping to get a more complex sound and not a
Hmm.
if you want a sound that sounds thin, like if you want to make it sound like it's coming through an old telephone or something, you can do that in an audio program. You can
Right.
change it, and that's something that has to do with EQ. And we can talk about that in session 2. So Sam, sorry, can you break down as simply as possible
Hmm.
condenser versus dynamic?
Yeah. So, condenser essentially means that the microphone needs to receive power in order to work. Dynamic microphone does not need a power source in order to work.
So it just gets the power through the cable.
It doesn't need any power. It just sends the signal on its own.
Whoa. Okay.
Um,
And
Dynamic,
what does
yeah.
that mean for the sound?
So dynamic microphones typically have a much lower output level. Like the raw signal that they're sending out is much weaker, which in turn means that you need to add a lot of amplification in your recording setup. So, for example, this mic needs a lot of amplification, which is called gain, um, in order to get a good sound. And that in turn can cause issues if you have an inexpensive audio interface. You run the risk of getting some noise and things like that from not being able to give the microphone as much gain as it wants. Condenser microphones are good because they require something that somebody just mentioned here called phantom power. That
Sean
is,
Kennedy, hi, Mel.
yep, yep, you nailed it. Phantom power is what the electricity that a condenser mic requires is called. Sometimes you'll see it abbreviated as 48V because it's 48 volts. Um, so if you see a switch, if you have an audio interface like mine, doesn't say phantom power, it says 48V, but that's the same thing. So a condenser microphone needs 48 volts of electricity to come into it in order to return that microphone signal, that sound. And the benefit of that is that the condenser mic sends out a much louder raw signal, so you don't need as much gain. So
So I'm just going to break this down a little bit too,
yeah.
because this is something that, someone will say this gain signal, and I'm just like, what's going on? But basically, when you're recording at home and you have to turn the level of the microphone up so high, you start to get a hiss, and it's just like an electronic hiss. It's not even the hiss of the room, it's just the hiss of like the electronics working, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you go back and listen to it, you can hear either like a or you're just going to get a sound in the background all the time. So if you can get a microphone where you don't have to crank it up to a 9 or a 10 basically, and if you're using something like this, the gain or the microphone level is on that little knob right here. So if I'm having, and what's really nice actually about the Zoom is these mics are super sensitive. So, if I'm singing full blast and I'm going to have it like a foot away from me, I have to put it on like a 4 or something. I mean, it's going to get a really rich sound. And even on a 4, I might peak it if I'm singing at my loudest. Uh, anyway, but if you turn up to a 9 or a 10, you're just going to get hiss, and you don't want that hiss. And that hiss is almost, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's really, really hard to take out after the fact. And Deshaun, you were asking about what do we do in a situation where you have like a refrigerator running in the background, or you have something else, and taking out those kinds of room sounds, it's doable, but it's always at some kind of cost. So you want to try to not do it, or record in a kind of microphone or closely enough to the microphone that you're not getting all this other background noise too. But that's very challenging if you're an operatically trained singer, because you're having to sing so loud, you can't record this closely into a microphone. So yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some ways that you can use directional microphones to your advantage to reduce that noise in the initial recording. And then in session 2, when we talk a little bit more about the software, we'll talk about how to try to get rid of some of that sound. But like Lucy said, when you're removing noise from a recording, you're also affecting the part of the sound that you want to keep. So that can cause some problems.
And someone's asking, is a USB mic completely different from a condenser mic and a dynamic mic, or is it one of the two?
That's a good question. I think that USB mics, I wouldn't really call them a condenser or a dynamic mic, but I think if you were to get really technical about it, they're probably condenser mics, because they definitely are getting power from the computer. Um, but it's not only for the microphone, it's also for the digital stuff inside that USB mic is doing. So it's mostly different. I don't think USB mics really fall into those categories.
So going back to the term directional, or like
Mm.
an omnidirectional mic, right? That's a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
does that have to do with whether or not it's a condenser or a dynamic, or is that something different? Can you have an omnidirectional condenser and a directional dynamic. Sorry,
Yeah.
my brain just started to stop because I started to use too many terms.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, that's a good next thing to talk about. So, um, microphones have different, they pick up sound in different directions. Um, and there are three or four kind of basic um, types of directional or omnidirectional microphones. Omnidirectional means it picks up sound in all directions. So I have a small condenser microphone here uh, that I'll use to illustrate. So if this was omnidirectional, it would pick up as much sound from this direction as from behind it. This is the front, and this is where the cable goes. But it picks up as much sound from this side as it does from this side, and also from either side this way. So if you imagine a sphere around this, that's all the sound that it's going to pick up. That's omnidirectional.
And what
Um,
in what situation are you using that kind of a mic?
You're really only using an omnidirectional microphone if you're in a space that sounds amazing and you want to capture the sound of that space. Otherwise, omnidirectional microphones will pick up all the stuff you don't want in a room,
Okay.
like your refrigerator or like the street noise or whatever.
Okay.
Um, Even some halls that are still concert halls but don't sound that nice, you wouldn't want to use an omnidirectional mic.
Mm.
Um, so then there are varying degrees of more directional microphones. The most common is called cardioid, which I will put in the chat. And I'm telling you that,
Cardioid has to do with direction?
yes,
I had no idea. Wow.
I'm going to say most common directional mic type is called cardioid. So I just put that in the chat. Um, and that's what most mics that you see are. Like this one is actually cardioid. This is cardioid. SM58's cardioid.
Hmm.
All the mics I have here are cardioid
Hmm.
in their directionality. And
Are these ones cardioid?
yes, those are cardioid.
Hmm. How do you
Um,
know?
because I know that particular
Okay.
piece of gear. But also, whenever you see microphones arranged like that,
Uh-huh.
those are that's a way of recording in stereo that specifically uses directional microphones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I know that they're for sure not going to be omnidirectional, and they're not going to be something else called figure eight. They're
Mm.
either going to be hyper or super cardioid or regular just cardioid. So that was a lot of words,
Terms I just
but I'm gonna talk about cardioid for now. So cardioid is the most common directional type of microphone, um, and it's signified by. Can't, I don't think you can see that at all. It looks like a heart basically, but the yeah, it doesn't really matter. There's a symbol for cardioid that is illustrating the direction that this picks up in. So it picks up the most sound straight on this way.
mm-hmm.
And then it picks up less and less and less and less and less sound as you go off to the side, and almost no sound from the back,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we were playing with when I go over here. If I go all the way behind, you probably couldn't hear me very well at all just then. So that's
So this is
demonstrating
good.
cardioid.
This is good if you have a humming refrigerator, right? Because you
Exactly.
want to place the end of the microphone towards the humming refrigerator so that you don't pick it up.
Exactly. So that's how you can use directional microphones to your advantage. If you have something like a microphone or a noisy roommate behind the door or whatever, you can aim that microphone so that the back of the microphone is here. This is more obvious. Back of the microphone is pointing towards the noise, and it's pointing towards you on the business side. So it's getting the most of you and the least noise possible. Um,
I'm curious how many people here are recording like with a noisy situation around them. Like I have 6th Avenue on one side of my house. Yeah. I have windows over here. I'm just curious how many of you in the chat
Yeah.
are.
I'm guessing unless you have a studio or you live in the country,
Yeah.
HVAC system right above my desk. Yep.
Wow. Exposed subway tracks. Dang.
Yeah.
That is challenging.
So I'll talk also later, either later or session two, depending on how the time is, but about other ways other than directional microphones that you can reduce outside sound.
Yes.
And then I'll just cover quickly the other words that I mentioned, hyper and super cardioid. Uh, Hyper and super basically just mean even more cardioid. So super cardioid is more directional than cardioid. Hypercardioid is the most directional.
Mm.
Um, and then the other one that I mentioned briefly, figure eight, is if you imagine if I hold this mic like this, it picks up as much sound from the front as it does from the back, but it doesn't pick up any sound from the sides.
Mm.
So if you imagine an eight like that going through the microphone, that's why it's called that.
Is that like I've done studio recordings before and the mic will be like this and I'm recording like what feels like onto the side of the mic. Is that a figure eight mic potentially?
Potentially, yeah, but not always. And that's actually a good next thing to talk about, and that's why I have this mic here. It's pretty clear, I think, which end you want to use for a mic like this or a SM58 or this one because it has the bracket. I can't really talk into the side of it so well. Um, this one, if you didn't know, it would make more sense to talk into the side than into the side with this bracket.
Mm.
Um, but in fact, this would sound like this if I used it that way. So these are, if the mic is used like this, it's called side address because you're addressing it from the side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Microphones that you use like this are typically called end fire. People don't really say that, but if you have to make a distinction between side address and head on, the
Mm-hmm.
term for that is end fire. Um,
Oh,
ooh,
very
I hope
good.
this is a picture. Yeah.
Thank you, Ariadne's dad, Jeff Reif, for being here. I'm so glad you're here. Um,
So a lot of kind of higher end condenser microphones will be side address. So they'll be in a shock mount and you'll sing into it like this. Um, but those still might be cardioid. That just means that they only pick up from this side.
mhm.
If you're using a ribbon mic, which you might see in some fancy studios, um, those are pretty much all figure eight. But I'm not going to talk too much about those because
You
I
shouldn't
don't,
use them.
don't get a ribbon mic.
Can we? I'm just gonna mention real quick because I know a lot of people are doing iPhone videos essentially. If this has ever happened to you, I just want to mention it, and then we can talk about it. But sometimes I will record the video on the iPhone and then record the audio on the Zoom, and then I will try to put them together.
And they
And
don't match.
then after a minute, I'm wondering why they stopped syncing when because you have to take, the waveforms and line them up exactly where they start. Usually you get a good clap at the beginning,
Hmm.
um, line up that clap, and then you go. And after a minute, one or the other will be ahead, the audio or the video. And that's because your iPhone camera is not recording like an even frame rate, which means that the more you're moving on screen, it's recording at a faster frame rate. And if you're really still and there's not a lot going on, it's going to shoot fewer kind of pictures per second. which means that when you line it up with a Zoom recorder, which is recording in a fixed rate the whole time, you're going to end up with something that does not sync over time, unless you're shooting like a 30-second or a 1-minute video. So if you're shooting on your iPhone and you're doing video and you want it to record in even frame rate, it's been recommended to me on my iPhone that I shoot in Filmic Pro, which is an app. And I'm going to open it so you can see. I mean, it just kind of makes your phone into a camera, which is nice, but then I record into here and then you put them together. But I just want to talk about iPhone recording real quick, just because some people are going to be recording that way. So Sam, what can you tell us about iPhone recording in general? Not video,
Yeah.
mostly just audio.
Yeah. Filmic Pro.
Filmic Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an absolute nightmare to deal with that. And that can happen with other two different pieces of audio equipment as well. If you're recording at the same time on different systems, if they're not on the same time zone next to each other, you can run into those problems. In terms of recording audio only, you can get a little microphone that plugs into the bottom of your phone, and they have those for iPhones and Android. Also, Zoom makes those. They make a few different options for stereo and other various kinds of stereo recording. Rode, RODE, make those, but they cost almost the same as the Zoom H1, the whole recorder in one. So I typically just recommend people get that. Unless you really don't want to have to carry an extra thing, then you can get the little mics that plug right in. And then if you have that, then you can download the Zoom app, which I think is free because you can only use it if you have their hardware, and record straight into that. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Yeah. If anyone has any questions about recording on an iPhone, let us know. So your iPhone is also going to automatically compress the sound, which Sam mentioned earlier, but it just means that it's going to take the loud sounds and it's going to turn them down. It's going to take the soft sounds and it's going to put them up, which can be helpful if you're, recording at a funny distance, or, it can kind of tell what the signal is in a way, which is good. But it will also sound with, I mean, technically that's called compression, right? When you take the loud sounds and you turn them down, you take the small sounds and you put them up, because you're compressing you're trying to make everything generally about the same sound, which is a big deal to know about, everyone. Compression is really important. It's something that you can do in, I think you can do it in Audacity. You can definitely do it in Logic and Ableton and Reaper. But this is a really big difference between classical music recordings and pop music recordings. Classical music recordings, in my opinion, are not compressed enough. And that's why I blast, I'm like ruining my hearing trying to listen to a string quartet, because I want to hear the soft stuff and it's, very, very low. And then at the high points, it's like really, really high. Anyway, pop music is definitely more compressed. If you're, going to look at the waveforms, it doesn't have as many giant lows and highs. So compression is a really important just term to know about as far as recording goes. And always your iPhone audio all by itself is always going to be compressing the sound. So
yeah, unless you're right, like in audio memos, for example, it's going to be all over the place. Which is why I was recommending a different app like the GarageBand for iPhone, or this other app called Spire from Isotope, which I'll just put in here. Spire from Isotope.
So can we talk now about? Sorry, do you have one
more thing? Yeah. So while compression is everywhere, especially in pop music, I just wanted to say that, like all things in the recording process, you don't want your gear to do it by itself. You want to be in control. So even though there's compression in pop music, that doesn't mean you should go record your pop song in the Voice Memos app. You want to add that compression yourself so you can dial it in precisely.
Good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, I'm a singer. I have an SM58 like this. I'm recording some music. How close should I be to the microphone, Sam? Where should I be? Should I be here? Should I record like this? What happens if I move like 3 feet away from the microphone? What happens if I'm also trying to record, like if I'm doing something voice and piano, should I record into this kind of a microphone? Break it down for all of us.
Yeah, so this is where I'm going to preface this with a non answer. And the non answer is that you really are going to have to try some different things and see what's working best for your whatever it is you're trying to record. Um, just so that I don't get into trouble by saying you do it this way and then you do it that way and it sounds terrible. so, um, but to answer your question, basically, if you're singing something and in general it's going to be on the softer side, you can get right up on the mic. Even if you're singing pretty loudly, if you're not singing with a lot of dynamic range. So, for example, if you're singing a rock song and it's pretty high throughout, especially with a mic like a 58, it can take that amount of volume. Um, if you're singing something more classical or something with a lot of dynamic range, where you have pianissimo to fortissimo, that's going to be really tricky no matter where you are away from the microphone. And that's when we start talking about how to maybe change your performance a little bit specifically for recording. Because, in my opinion, it's better to do that kind of compression of the dynamic range in the performance itself, so in your own singing, rather than having to try to do that in software after to even those things out. And
Did
um,
everyone catch that? Don't use as many extreme dynamics in your recording. This is the
yeah,
official advice. This is something important to know. So don't make your softs as soft. Make the intention soft, but don't actually make the volume soft,
right.
right? Yes. Super
Yeah,
helpful advice. Yes. And then if you're going to do dynamics, so you want to be pretty much, Sam, right? You want to be pretty much as close. If you're on an SM58, you want to be as close as you can to it without clipping it, right? Like you
yeah,
get a more rich sound if you're close to it.
yeah. With any directional microphone, the closer you are, the more low frequencies you're going to get. It actually being close to a directional microphone actually adds low frequencies that might not be in your voice, which might be a good thing depending on your voice.
For me,
Um, yeah, again, this is something you have to try out because I was mixing a song by a woman who has a lower voice, like more of an alto,
mhm.
and I could hear when she was moving around because when she was right up on it, it was actually stuck out too much.
Mm.
Um, so you just that's the kind of thing that you have to try out. But in general, you want to be close to a microphone, especially a dynamic microphone. Um, a good range in terms of distance for a microphone like a 58 or a 57, which I have here, which is the same microphone, but Lucy's has a pop screen on it like this, but it's built in, and mine is squashed. um, but in general, you want to be about 3 or 4 inches from that. And if you want more bass, you can get closer.
Mm.
If you want a pretty consistent sound, that's about a good uh, distance. This is generally somebody asked if this is true of dynamic and condenser mics. Yeah, I think 3 to 4 inches, or the quick trick is just put your fist there and then take it away, and that's the distance. And then if you have a pop screen, you put it in the middle.
Hmm.
And I recommend getting a pop screen.
I'm just going to remind everyone that when in your chat on the to field, if you select that, it'll say all panelists, or it's like all panelists and attendees. and then you can select specific people. But I would recommend ask your questions in the all panelists and attendees mode so that everyone can see your question, because y'all might be able to answer each other's questions in the chat, which is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we
So,
want to be this
mhm.
distance away for consistency, extra close if you want it nice and if you want the midnight special sound, but
Yeah.
not further, really, not like this.
Unless you want to record the sound of the room, and which if you're recording with piano, then you want the microphone not to be right up in your mouth, because then you won't get enough of the piano. But I was talking about this with Lucy the other day, and you might put the microphone equidistant from you and from the piano and get too much piano or
Mm.
too much voice. So that's something you kind of have to play around with and get to know in your space. But in general, if you're in an apartment, or not a recording studio or a concert hall, you're not going to want to get that much room sound. You're going to want to get mostly voice, because then you can add that room sound or put some reverb on it in post, as they say.
Mm.
But that's the kind of thing like where you want to be able to control that. You don't want to have that baked into your recording, because it's going to be much harder, if not impossible, to take it out than it will be to add it after.
I'm going to say one other thing about enunciation of text in a microphone. Uh, Obviously, if you've been trained to sing unamplified, you've also been trained to spit your consonants in the text as much as possible. And you have to bring it down from about a 10 to a 1 if you're on a microphone. You want barely anything, because p is gonna peak everything. So you actually have to go through often and select specifically the p's, sometimes also the t's, but p's are a real problem. You have to almost like not say them. But anyway, that's something you learn as you go. But we all really have to take it down. I mean, I think you have to think about recording for singers. It's a completely different medium than live performance, right? Um, so people are generally listening to it this way, or these old things. But we're listening to it in our ears this way, which is a different medium than with a face and a hall and a group of people. So I just want us
Sorry,
all to be. It's okay. You made a
I
switch
was
through.
I was getting a pop filter.
Yes. Yes.
This is a pop filter. It came with the first microphone that I ever bought. It's just a piece of fabric. It's actually two pieces of fabric, and let's say this mic doesn't have one built in, so I would set my distance like this, and then I would clip this to the phantom stand and put it right in between there. And that's going to really help cut down on all those popping P's and T's and things. And that'll make it much easier for you to edit after the fact. And then I'm going to show you this microphone. Sorry, this might be noisy.
Okay.
So this microphone has one built in.
Mm,
And the reason why I get right up on this microphone is because the actual part of the mic that's picking up the sound is several inches in the mic.
mm,
So if I hold up some, you can see that's actually the part of the mic that's picking up the sound. And
mm.
this is just empty space.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that true
So,
on an SM58 also?
um,
No.
so the ball on the end of those mics
Mhm.
does have, it's the opposite of this. It's the metal on the outside with some foam on the inside.
Mm,
But
mm,
even with that mic, you know, you're maybe 1 inch away instead of three.
mm, mm.
So that's another thing, when you get your mic, you just experiment with it and see how it sounds close up and further away.
Um, Other question, Sam. should we be listening to ourselves as should we have headphones on? How does it work when we're recording? Should we be listening? Should we be watching levels like because we're all kind of playing singer and sound engineer at the same time. So
Right.
what do we have to keep our eye on while we're recording ourselves?
Yeah, this is a great question. I generally recommend that you sing while you're setting your gain, which is going to be the amount of amplification applied to your microphone. And that might be set either in the software that comes with your audio interface, or a physical knob on the audio interface, or the wheel on Lucy's Zoom, and watch the meter there. Yeah, you can see some bars moving, and that shows you how loud the signal is.
Check,
S-
check, 1, 2. I'm just playing.
Yeah, yeah, we can see it moving.
Yeah,
So
you can see it. And if I'm singing, I want it to be right like at about like 3/4 of the way up, right? Or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. And if you tap the mics kind of gently but a little harder,
Oh yeah, you see that
and
red
you can
thing?
see the bars, yeah, and you see the red light flashing. In general, in audio, if there's a red light flashing, something needs to change. But in this case, for gain settings, that means that the signal is too loud, and the microphone or whatever equipment you're using is going to distort because it can't handle
So
that much volume, which is impossible to fix.
when I do my level checking and I'm setting my initial levels and I'm singing through a part of my piece and I'm singing the loudest part, where do I want that little uh soundometer to go to?
So I think there are numbers along the bottom there
Yes.
on the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So that,
Starts at -48,
mhm,
-32, -18, -12, -6, and 0. That's
right.
confusing.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that some more probably next time. Why is it all negative? But zero in audio land in terms of setting gain and volume is the maximum.
0 is over on the high end.
Yep, zero is the loudest, and if your sound hits zero or goes over zero, that's when it just takes that sound wave. If you picture a sound wave, it just chops it off, and that's when you get distortion.
Which sounds like
Um, yeah,
right
that
on a high.
sounds terrible.
Yeah, it'll sound like your when your headphones are broken and it goes with all the loud noises. That's distortion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you'll see the little red light blinking in the software. Also, have a red light when you do that overload of sound, which is called clipping. Um, so when you're singing and you're singing at the loudest part of the piece, you want those bars to be reaching around the -6 level.
which is like 75%, like
Yeah,
3/4 of the way over.
yeah. And at your absolute loudest, you don't want it going over -6. That's as a safeguard. So you have, I can't even hear you, Lucy.
I know you can't hear me, but can you see it on my meter?
Yeah,
I clipped it even there for a second.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So -6 is the maximum that you want to be reaching on those meters, and it's the same numbers in your software, or if you're using an audio interface, those are standard numbers, the -6, -12. -12 is kind of your mezzo forte, standard kind of average volume, and your -18 to -20, maybe 22, is about where you want your softest sound. So it's really not that big of a range.
Mm.
The thing is, if your fortissimo is at -6 and your pianissimo is at -48, you're going to have to turn those soft parts up so much that you're going to get all kinds of other noise and unwanted sound
It's gonna be bad.
in your
Compressed
recording.
compress in here.
Yeah,
Left
compress on the
right.
inside. Somebody, this is a good question. Somebody asked, do you recommend the same reduced dynamic range for concert recordings of, say, voice and piano? No. Let me think about
Concert
that. No.
recordings,
Yeah,
meaning
no.
a live recording.
I think that's what they mean. Yeah. And in which case, no, I think if you're performing for an audience, that comes first. And chances are the recording for that is going to be more archival. If you're performing for an audience with the intention of having that being professionally mixed and released at some point, then you might have some other things to take into consideration. But um, definitely, if you're performing live, you should be performing live first, and then
Uh,
if you're also doing a concert recording, you probably aren't going to put your mic right up here. If you're using a Zoom or a stereo miking situation, you're going to want to record from further back to get the blended sound, most likely.
mhm. Um, we have a few more things on our list here that we can talk about. So we talked about how far away should we be? How do we check levels? Um, I just want to mention the difference between open back headphones and closed back headphones, and I'm gonna show you a couple different ones. So these are closed back headphones, which means hopefully they keep all the sound inside and they don't bleed. So if you're listening to something with a click track and you want to be able to hear the click track but not have the click track bleed into the microphone, closed back headphones are good. If you want to be able to hear things outside of you and not feel like you're recording in like a vacuum sealed container, then having open back headphones like the ones that I have on here are better. And you can see they have little vents on the side. I will try to show you without taking them off. Um, uh, so I have been told by audio engineers that these are better for singers because we do actually kind of want to be able to hear ourselves in a room, or we're used to doing that. So we want to do it this way. Sam, can you talk a little bit about headphones?
Yeah, so I have another example. These are closed back. They have um, cushions on them, but these are closed back, and these are also Sennheiser. Um, and then the ones that I'm wearing currently are open, and I'll just take them off and show you that, like Lucy's, you can actually see the whole speaker assembly in there. It's the screen on there is really for protection. um, yeah. So yeah, these are um, first of all, they're more comfortable for me at least, and yeah, open back headphones in general are better for sound. They generally sound better. They'll represent your recording better. Um, but they have huge drawbacks like any sound that's outside can get in, and a lot of sound that's inside the headphones can come out, like click tracks, as Lucy mentioned. So open back headphones are not good for recording, especially if you're using a click track, because often you need that click track to be pretty loud, and you're so close to the microphone that those metronome clicks can get into your recording. So, but it's only a problem if you hear them in there. If you put your recording in with your track and you don't hear the click from your vocal recording, it's not a huge deal. But in general, it's a bit of a risk to use open back headphones when recording, especially with a click track. Closed back headphones, not only do they keep the sound in, but they also keep outside sounds out much better than open back headphones do. So I use these headphones when I'm traveling all the time, and these headphones really strictly stay home for use here. And in terms of which headphones to get, um, this is a very big topic of conversation on the internet. But if you're going to really need to be doing critical listening, um, you have to spend at least some money on headphones, like $100. But that's really if you're going to be mixing something to be released and you want the headphones to last a long time. If you're not kind of doing those more professional tasks, then you can spend a bit less. But the issue with headphones is that I'm guessing probably most people here don't have professional studio monitors like speakers either. So you want to get headphones that are at least going to give you a relatively fair representation of what your recording will sound like on different headphones or for different people. You
Mm-hmm.
might think that it sounds really good for you, then somebody else gets it and it's super, super bassy or there's no bass at all. Those are the kinds of things that you want to be aware of. So,
I know I've had the experience of listening to myself in headphones on like voice memos and then playing it over the speakerphone on my phone, and like just those two experiences are it's basically what you're talking about, that you want to be listening to the sound in different formats. So these kinds of headphones, monitors on your desk, which can I hello. There we go. Can you see that little KRK
uh,
speaker? That
kind of.
kind of sorry.
Yeah, there it is. Nice.
I had to wait for the compressed video to light it up. Can we go to questions now, Sam? I know we have
Yeah,
you in here.
yeah, yeah.
Is
So
Alana
there's,
or
oh,
Alana? You have a really nice long question here.
yeah,
Uh,
this is a great question.
should we
Um,
read?
I'll, yeah. So the question is talking about the app I mentioned, Spire for multi-tracking. That's great to hear that it's fun. I haven't actually used it that much, so that's great. So the question is, I currently use the mic from the iPhone and headphones. Not great as you can imagine. How would you use an SM58 with this situation? So is there a way to connect XLR to iPhone? And as we remember, the XLR is this cable which connects to the microphone. It looks like that.
Mhm.
Um, and so the answer is yes. It is possible to connect a dedicated microphone or an XLR cable to a phone these days. You have to look for an audio interface, though, and you need one that's called something called class compliant audio interface, which I'll put in here for smartphone
Also, can
use.
I show a little piece of equipment that I have, Sam?
Yeah.
This is like a connector that goes to the bottom of the iPhone. And then on the bottom here, it has a port for your power and for a USB. Could I plug the bottom of my Focusrite, my audio interface in here and plug that into my phone?
Um, I don't know off the top of my head if your specific Focusrite will work with that, but if you have an audio interface that is able to do that, then yes, that's
Hmm.
exactly right.
Hmm.
So, and I think a lot of the newer Focusrites actually can connect to a phone or an iPad
Wow.
with that
And then
little
you would just
adapter.
open up like the GarageBand app.
Yeah.
Whoa. I'll have to
Yeah,
try that.
so you set your gain and all that, and you could even plug your headphones into the audio interface, and then you just use the iPhone or the tablet as the recording software, basically, in place of a computer, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, so if you go on Sweetwater, which is where I buy gear from, new gear, not used gear. Yeah, there's a comment here. I think iPad, but not iPhone. Not enough power from the phone for some Focusrite. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you can use the external power supply and connect it with the USB. But if you look on sweetwater.com, there's a whole section of the audio interfaces place where you can browse audio interfaces that works with iPhone and iPads. So those should all work. And actually, some of them are specifically intended for use with iPhones and iPads and come with the lightning connectors, so you don't even need the adapter. But yeah, so you can get an audio interface to use with a smartphone or tablet.
Are
See
there
some
other
other
parts of
things
that
to do
question?
here.
I wonder if you can use an app, Filmic Pro, to improve the mic quality in the phone so the tracks are even better when they get recorded into Spire.
I I don't think so. I think that, excuse me, if you're using Spire, that's about as good as you're going to get from the iPhone mic.
Um, Aaron Wagner is asking about the Zoom recorder that does video and audio, and I'm just looking that up because I
Yeah,
remember when that came out.
I'm using the Q2N 4K handy video recorder. I'll put that in here.
Oh, I see it. Yeah.
Zoom. They have a couple of different ones.
Looks like it's only
Q2N.
220 bucks on at B&H.
Yeah, it was pretty reasonable, and the video quality is good enough, for this. And um,
Hmm.
if the lighting was better in here, it would actually look even better. And I can let you hear it. So I'm going to switch from this mic to that one. So now you should be hearing me from here if I scratch it. Um, so yeah, and this has the same kind of microphones that look like that. So I could use, yeah, exactly. So I could use this without this at all, but I like this more. And now it should be back on here. So yeah, the Q2N 4K, they have some other ones. I think with the difference with those is that the more expensive ones have better cameras, and they look kind of like little video cameras.
Hmm.
Um,
Jeff Greif is asking here uh, about the singing or playing with closed back headphones, and then it makes it hard to hear. And yeah, you can do the thing where you take one off, so that you can kind of hear yourself in the space. But you're right, it's not the same. It's like singing with your fingers in your ears, where you're really only getting that signal, that's in here, but you're not getting kind of like the full expansion of the sound in the space. Um, so you haven't used direct monitoring. I don't find that there's any delay if I'm recording into something like Logic or Ableton, and I, am singing into this kind of a mic, and I turn on the monitoring essentially in the system so that I can hear myself back. I don't hear any delay. So if that's helpful.
yeah, the delay also has to do with some settings in the software. So, excuse me. So, if you are getting a lot of delay, there's a setting you can basically turn down, and it reduces the delay. We can talk about that at next session. I think that would be really helpful. Yeah, but one way around singing with closed back headphones on exactly is to monitor, and you could even put some reverb on there and have your headphones on, and then make it sound like you're in a cathedral if you want.
Yeah.
Some specific headphones.
Susan Bocci asked that.
Um, yeah, somebody asked, can you recommend some specific headphones? I'm a little biased because I am an audio engineer and I have a lot of strong feelings about headphones. But for, well, off the bat, I don't really have recommendations for headphones under 100 bucks. Just I don't feel good recommending stuff I don't know that much about. But if you're going to spend $100 or more, I really think you can't go wrong with anything from Sennheiser, which I'll put the name in here. Sennheiser for headphones and mics. They make fantastic mics as well. Um, I think I mentioned before, these and these are both Sennheiser. These are like indestructible. These are called HD 25, and they actually have. I don't think you can see that, but they're called HD 25, and they have versions of these I think that are as cheap as maybe even $80 now. Um, so I recommend Sennheiser. Um, Lucy has Bear Dynamic headphones that she's currently wearing, and her closed back white headphones are Audio Technica. Those are also great options. Um,
I
those
like
are
the
all.
hear without me even telling you what it is.
Yeah, you know, I spend a lot of time looking at headphones on the internet. um, those
Yes.
are all great options. The Bear Dynamic 770s are the closed back version of what Lucy's currently wearing, which are around the same price as these. Um, these Sennheisers, I compared them and personally preferred the sound of these, um, although these are not as comfortable. So,
Mm.
you know, it depends if you're going to be wearing them for hours on end or not. Um,
They do start to hurt. These ones actually, these start to hurt my ears after a while. If
hmm,
you're an earring wearer, not a good idea when you're
yeah.
recording. Someone asked if you can use a shotgun mic for recording, like a which I've seen with like video equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've seen any of the NPR Tiny Desk concerts, the singers there are often singing into shotgun mics, which I think is really interesting
Mm.
because they're all, you know, everybody at NPR is a journalist, so they have a lot of shotgun mics around. Um, yeah, I don't think there's really much reason not to use a shotgun mic except for the tone. I haven't used that many shotgun mics. If you have very extremely noisy surroundings, a shotgun mic is even more directional than a hypercardioid microphone, um, which is good, I suppose, if you're, you know, in a very noisy environment. Um, but it's not really going to have as much kind of musicality or tone as a more traditional microphone. And also, a lot of shotgun mics have a pretty significant cut of low frequencies.
Mm.
So if you have a low voice, you might lose a lot of that low warmth. Also, because even if you get right up to the end of a shotgun microphone, the capsule, the part that's actually picking up the sound, is at the other end of the microphone. Um, so you don't get the benefit of being able to get right up on it,
Mm.
even though it is a directional microphone.
I
So
won't.
the answer is yes, but maybe not for every kind of music.
Mm. I remember an audio professor that I worked with in undergrad was talking about how different voice types have different like spreads over time. So like,
Mm.
you know, like in your Handel Messiah, and you have, you know, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass soloists. The soprano, her depending where she's facing, it's going to be very directional. But the bass, just because of the frequency, will spread. So if you're on the sides of the hall, you're going to hear the bass more, and the soprano is more directional. And I'm sure that has something to do also with these kinds of microphones. That if you're singing with a higher voice or higher frequencies versus lower frequencies, you know, something super directional, it's gonna be even more directional for a high voice. Is that correct, Sam?
Um,
Or something like that?
I kind of have to think through that, but I think in general, yes. Yeah, so it is absolutely true that and that's physics of sound. Low frequencies go in all directions and take less energy to disperse as high frequencies. The higher the frequency, the more directional it becomes. Um, so, like if you think about a car that's playing really loud, bass heavy music, and you're 2 blocks away, the first thing you hear is the bass. And then as you get closer and closer, you hear the higher and higher frequencies. And as you get further and further away, it goes back down to low frequencies. So definitely, if you're recording with a directional microphone in a hall, like a shotgun microphone, for example, and it's pointing over there, and the singer is here, you'll still hear the singer, but you'll hear the sound, especially the high frequencies of the singer as they're bouncing off the walls, and less from straight from them.
Mm.
Um, so typically, actually, in that recording setup like this that Lucy's Zoom has, or other kinds of recording setups that use cardioid directional microphones, you actually often don't point them straight at the source. Another really common way of recording that I use a lot is using two cardioid microphones like this. Um, and all the performers are in the middle there. And the way these two directional microphones combine gives you a really nice full spread of the performers without emphasizing too much high frequencies from any one
Mm.
performer.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I honestly, when it comes to voice, I, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. It's really not until you get to instruments like bass or um, percussion where that starts being a big issue.
Mm-hmm. So we have 5 minutes left. I would just want to see if we can answer a couple of these quick questions. So
Yeah,
Fabian asks, you're mentioning GarageBand. Do you think it's good enough to do most vocal editing? I started using Reaper and it is great, but I'm always struggling to figure it out, and it's multiple fancy possibilities. Fabian, I'll just from my point of view, yeah, you can do quite a bit of editing in GarageBand. If you want something if you get comfortable in GarageBand and you want the next better thing that's very, very similar, Logic essentially is the same setup as GarageBand, but it just, you can get into finer details and select things more precisely, which if you're doing audio editing and you're wanting to take out breaths and kind of like splice stuff in, it's easier to use and a little cleaner. But Sam does recommend that you use Reaper, and Reaper has a lot of great kind of tutorials. And there is definitely a learning curve with any of that software. So, but yeah, but
yeah,
we don't recommend Audacity. That's the official unrecommendation of the day. No Audacity.
yeah. And I'll talk more also next week about how once you learn a program like GarageBand, you can apply the same principles to Reaper or Logic, especially Logic, but to other audio software programs. Yeah, we can get into that for sure.
Someone asks, they have AKG brand 240 studios. These are headphones, I assume. Is it?
Yeah, I'm gonna look them up real quick. AKG 240. Ah, yeah. And then the rest of the question was, do you
They're
recall this kind still good? Yeah, I think those are fine. Those are I think a combination of open and closed, which is kind of weird, but I would consider them open because if it's open at all, it's gonna let sound out. But
mm,
yeah, those are good. I actually mainly don't like those for the way that they're built. They have the strap with the wires that come over. Some people really like that design, but it didn't work for me. And I also have been using Sennheiser headphones since high school, so I've gotten really, really accustomed to the way Sennheiser sounds. Um, so I stick with Sennheiser, but it's a personal thing, and I think those are fine.
I'm
There's
not
a
sure.
saying in the photography community, the best camera is the one you have. And I think that really applies to audio stuff too. You know, there you can use whatever you have on hand to get started and build from there.
I'm not sure if our Zoom is going to end right at 4 o'clock or if it allows us to go a couple minutes over, because this is a webinar and I've never done a webinar before. um, yes. So this is all going to be recorded. We will put it up for all of you. I put again the link to the Google Doc where we have a kind of outline. Next week, same time, we will be going over more of the software end, setting things up. And I think it will be the option for all of you to also be on video. So if you have questions about specific setups or you're setting something up and you want to show us what you're doing, you can do that. And then we're thinking for the third class that we would do kind of more specifically with people in their spaces to kind of show us the setup and talk things through. I'm just gonna real quick go over like the takeaways from today. Fewer consonants, fewer dynamics, less dynamics. Compress your sound already if you need to come away from the mic a little bit, but don't go crazy like this. You want to be 3 or 4 inches from the mic. This is the business end. Point the non-business end towards the noise source if you have a noise source. Zoom H1 is the cheapest, best small thing you can buy. And if you have $500, then you can invest in a kind of multi-setup, like the this, the this, the this, the this, and the interface. And then a DAW, we recommend Reaper. Pretty much it's free. If you want to do more stuff, you can go up to Logic, Ableton, and Pro Tools. But Reaper pretty much can do everything you want. Sam, any other takeaways? You?
I don't think so. That was pretty comprehensive. Make sure you download the PDF that was shared because that has a lot of the stuff that we talked about. And also, I wrote some examples of different mics and interfaces and things in that as well.
That's a link.
Um, and
And let
we'll,
us know your questions.
yeah, yeah. I wrote down Darcy's great question about using mixing board. So I'll make sure to come back to that next time.
Yeah, let's talk about that next time. But
Yeah.
essentially that's more for a live setup that you would need that kind of a mixer if you're doing stuff, because all of your mixing you can do on a DAW on Ableton, Logic, Reaper. And I also know that you can hook up your iPad if you want to be like a little mixing table that you can kind of plug in so that you don't have to buy something separate. But anyway, that's it.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Go record something. And if you want to send us, like, if anyone wants to send us samples of something and say, like, hey, I can't get this to not sound fuzzy, or I can't get this to sound good, or whatever, send it to us, info@resonantbodies.org. We'll take a look at it. Send us your questions. We'll answer them next time. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
Saturday. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Lucy.
Bye.
Bye.